matcha tea can kill breast cancer stem cells. Finding something that could kill cancer stem cells, which is what makes cancers come back, is a holy grail. We don't have a drug for it, but here, matcha tea actually been shown in the lab to actually be able to do that. 2 cups of shake as a smoothie a day, combined with the nose spray, they had a 22 times increase in their immune response to the flu vaccine compared to people who didn't have it. Has been shown to actually double the number of stem cells flowing in your bloodstream just by having 2 cups of hot chocolate made with 80%. Bottled water, which is so commonly consumed, probably will have microplastics in it. Almost certainly does. Yeah, well, stem cells are really simple. We're made of stem cells. So when our moms and dads got together and created, us in the womb, we started out as stem cells. They actually made every single organ.
An egg and a sperm.
An egg and a sperm got together, and they basically decided they would become a stem cell factory. And then pretty much we formed out of our own stem cells. And after we were born, a few of those stem cells stuck around, about 700,000 of them. They stick around, and they're mostly in our bone marrow, and they're in lining of our intestines. And they hide out in our body, and they help us regenerate. We know that we regenerate because our hair falls out and grows back. Our gut lining grows back. Our livers can grow back. If you actually remove part of your liver, it'll grow back.
Yeah.
Our skin grows back, So our bodies possess the ability to regenerate through stem cells. Now, what can injure stem cells? High doses of alcohol can damage and blunt your stem cells.
So I'm okay with the 1 tequila I had last night?
Having a tequila every now and then is not bad. Having a glass of wine. But it's the thing is, on balance, what you want to do is people who drink a lot have damaged stem cells. Diabetes is another state, a metabolic state that, it really impairs, it cripples our stem cells.
Sugar.
High blood sugar cripples our stem cells. So the excess of anything can be harmful, including to our stem cells. So what are the things that we can do to help boost our stem cells? This is where it's really become interesting. Before I talk about that, though, let me just tell you.
Does stress affect your stem cells?
Stress can definitely affect our stem cells. High stress will blunt the activity of our stem cells. It's just like stunning them. So they're like, wait a minute, what do I do now? Maybe I'm not going to be so enthusiastic in rebuilding our organs. We got to rebuild our blood vessels. We got to rebuild our hearts. Our hearts turn around. Like we actually have stem cells in our hearts and our brains, and regrow our nerves. Every single day, something in our body is regenerating. Actually, a lot of things are regenerating. But more exciting to me is the ability for every single person listening to this podcast to be able to actually enhance their own stem cells. And here's the research. So the Mediterranean diet, it's been a study by Spain, looked at elderly people on the Mediterranean diet. And those who were on a Mediterranean diet compared to not on a Mediterranean diet had 5 times the number of stem cells in their circulation, in their bloodstream.
Amazing.
So again, it's not one magic food, it's the pattern of food that you're actually eating. Now, when you can actually do the research on specific things as well. So for example, tea. Green tea will increase your stem cells, but guess what? So can black tea, right? So here's what the surprise is.
The Japanese live forever?
Well,
all the green tea?
People in Asia drink a lot of tea. People in Britain drink a lot of tea as well. Yeah. We used to say green tea's good, black tea's fermented, so it's not going to be that good for you. We're changing our minds. We have to keep our minds open. Black tea can also double the number of stem cells. And then here's another kind of surprise and delight is that there was a study by UCSF in San Francisco where researchers took people with known cardiovascular disease, so they had kind of crappy blood flow, and they gave them hot chocolate.
Yeah, I was going to say the chocolate stem cell story. I want to hear about that.
It's amazing, right? So the darker the chocolate, the higher the flavanols. These are the bioactives that are naturally present in cacao. Yeah. And there was a study done.
These are the food as medicine components.
This is the food as medicine.
There are literally these chemicals in food called phytochemicals or phytonutrients that actually have these medicinal properties.
They are made by Mother Nature. They're packed in the food, growing on the plant. And, every plant-based food will actually have some type of bioactive. So in cacao, which is a bean, which then you process to actually get, kind of the cocoa powder. If you take the really dark chocolate, like 73% cacao, the really dark chocolate, and you make it into a high-flavanol hot chocolate drink, and you have it twice a day. This was a clinical study. They found in people who wound up actually having drinking the hot chocolate twice a day over the course of a month, they doubled the number of stem cells compared to the people who didn't drink hot chocolate, right? And so, okay, so the question is that important? Well, when they measured their blood flow, what they did is they put a blood pressure cuff on them, and which, kind of like lowers the circulation of the blood. Then they let it go. They found that the blood flow was vastly improved.
Wow.
So here's a functional result that actually means it makes a difference. So who's going to complain about chocolate? Who's going to complain about tea? Who's going to complain about a Mediterranean diet? I mean, you go out to eat. These are the things we love.
Yeah. Getting people to think about food as not just calories, but information. Food is not just energy, but actually instructions that regulate your stem cells and your DNA and your microbiome and your immune system and your angiogenesis. I mean, these are things that are not things people think about.
It's the new science of nutrition, right? Yeah. So beyond proteins and calories and sugar and all that kind of stuff, we're now combining food science with life science. Dark chocolate.
Oh, you're speaking my language now. Okay. So dark chocolate. Can you eat too much dark chocolate? That's the question.
I have never seen anything about an overdose of cacao, but I will tell you that cacao has been shown to actually double the number of stem cells flowing in your bloodstream just by having 2 cups of hot chocolate made with 80% high-flavanol chocolate, dark chocolate.
Come on.
Yeah, that's been done in people, 60-year-olds with heart disease.
So wait, what happens when you drink or you eat this dark chocolate? Okay. What happens?
Yeah, the polyphenols in this dark chocolate that we know what they are. They're called proanthocyanidins. So I'm a scientist, so my job is to actually know what the inside chemicals actually are. Yes. These are natural chemicals, all right? Most people don't need to know that, but you drink it and it tastes good. That's all you need to know. But I'll tell you, these natural chemicals found in cacao actually trigger a reaction in your body so that they call out the stem cells. So it is literally like bees flying out of a hive, can double the number of stem cells. And what's the practical impact? Well, there was a study done at UCSF in San Francisco that looked at 60-year-old men with heart disease. So these are people whose blood vessels were already not doing so well, and their blood flow wasn't going so well either, and their blood vessels were kind of sick. That's kind of the definition of heart disease. Mm-hmm. By having the stem cells coming out, they were able to actually double the resiliency, the function of their blood vessels. So they got better rebound, they're better agility. Their blood vessels are in better shape because their stem cells are regenerating their circulation.
Wow.
So this is human studies, right? Like most of the time you hear about scientists talking about rats or mice or cells. I'm talking about human studies. And that's kind of where we are with food as medicine. It's not the kind of like the guesswork. Like we can do serious research to get down to exactly what's actually happening at the human level. So that's the second health defense systems.
Okay. Third one?
Third one is our gut microbiome. Now, people have been talking about gut health and microbiome. It's almost like a buzzword these days. And people are saying, well, we can actually scoop your poop and we can actually measure your microbiome and we can tell you what you need to eat and what you don't need to eat. Again, I'm a scientist, so I will tell you that there are 39 trillion bacteria in the typical body. That's more stars than in the night sky. All right.
Wow.
So we barely understand the gut bacteria, but what we do know is that this gut bacteria actually controls our metabolism, communicates with our brain, actually can help us heal from the inside out. And very importantly, our gut bacteria basically lives, if you think of your gut like a garden hose, it's a tube, and you were to cut a garden hose in half and you look inside it, there's a lining, okay? The bacteria is inside the hose, but inside the wall of the garden hose, that's where your immune system, 70% of our immune system lives inside our gut. So our gut bacteria.
70%. So if you're feeding your gut a lot of bad foods, it's probably
you're poisoning your immune system. You're preventing your gut bacteria. Now, I'll tell you what's interesting about the gut bacteria. Your gut bacteria talks to the immune system right through the walls of your gut. Immune system's in there, 70%, right? Like a jelly roll, like the jelly in a jelly roll, and the gut bacteria is inside. So think about like a college student in a freshman dorm. They are talking to their roommate by pounding on the wall, right? What do you want? What kind of pizza do you want? All right. And they can answer you. And that's basically what our gut bacteria says to our immune system. So we got to keep that gut healthy. By the way, interestingly, and I've done research on this, certain gut bacteria can actually signal to your brain. It's a gut brain axis, and cause your brain to release social hormones.
Wow.
Okay. And can affect your mood. So, when you've got a crappy gut and you feel crummy in your gut, I guarantee you, like, it's not just because you're irritated, it's affecting your brain as well.
That's crazy. So, yeah, we had Dr. Emran Mayer on, who has got the gut, I think it's the gut brain connection or the gut immune connection or something like that. So he's got a lot of great research on that.
Yeah. So, well, the key thing though is that foods can actually help right size your gut health. Think about it like an ecosystem, the Great Barrier Reef. So certain foods can support the ecology, the ecosystem, the Great Barrier Reef, and certain ones actually kill the coral. All right. And so it continuously want to keep it in good shape all the way through our lives. And by the way, even conditions like autism, Alzheimer's, and schizophrenia are all now seemingly connected to our gut bacteria.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, is there a way, if someone has those, are they pretty easy to reverse though, or is that hard?
We're just figuring this out, because right now, medically, we prescribe medications to try to treat those things. And a lot of times those medications just blunt the symptoms. Okay. They cover up the symptoms. They don't get at the underlying cause. Now, we don't know exactly how the gut bacteria communicates with the brain completely yet, but there's one giant nerve called the vagus nerve. It's like a giant shoe. It's about the thickness of a shoelace, and it hangs from our brain all the way down into our gut. Okay. Goes right near, wraps around our esophagus on the way down. And we think the gut bacteria basically sends text messages up to the brain through this big nerve. Okay. So the key though is that foods can actually influence our gut bacteria, either good bacteria or bad bacteria. So that's important. So that's a third health defense system.
Okay. So with the first,
angiogenesis, number one.
Yes.
Stem cells, number two.
Stem cells.
Gut microbiome, number three.
Okay. The fourth one?
Number four, our DNA. Now, if you watch CSI, DNA is just sort of like a genetic fingerprint, a code that you can find on a crime scene. Or if you're actually trying to do ancestry, look for your ancestors, you figure out how much of you is Neanderthal, right?
Yeah. So, I think I was 1% Neanderthal when I did it. Yes.
So the key though is DNA is a lot more than our genetic code. It actually protects us from the environment. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you know how if we are exposed to, we get sunburn, ultraviolet light, you damage your DNA, and what happens? Cancer, skin cancer, right? If you inhale lots of fumes from a chemical plant, it's going to actually damage your DNA in your lungs. You get lung cancer, right? But think about it. If you are in Los Angeles and you're driving on the I-10, or if you're actually just walking on a beach, you are actually getting ultraviolet radiation. So how come we don't get skin cancer all the time? Because our DNA is hardwired to fix itself from damage. And so the DNA is a protective mechanism from the environment. I always tell people, when you're pumping gas, if you still drive a gas vehicle as opposed to an EV, I always ask people, do you stand upwind or downwind? What do you do? Are you upwind or downwind? Do you know?
I mean, upwind, right? So you're not getting the fumes in. Is that what you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you're standing downwind, you can smell the fumes.
Yes.
Right. And if you're smelling the fumes, you are poisoning the DNA in your lung. So how come we don't develop lung cancer after pumping gas? Because our DNA is hardwired to fix itself. And so our DNA is sort of like a self-defense mechanism against the environment, radon from your basement, okay? Off-gassing from the new car you just got, or the Uber that you're riding in, or the furniture that you got. right? So like this is this incredible defense mechanism against our environment. And then and foods can actually speed up the repair, help fix holes that are in our DNA. And then the other kind of pièce de résistance for our DNA's defense is that there's something called a telomere. I don't know if you've ever had anybody on your show talk about telomeres.
Telomeres?
Yeah.
Yes.
These are
they see if you're the longer the telomere, the longer you can live or something, or they can.
Right. Well, I'll tell you basically what like to remind your listeners and viewers, basically, if your DNA is like a shoelace, the telomere is like the little plastic cap at the end of the shoelace. Mm-hmm. And over time, that little cap kind of wears down, just like on a shoelace. And when that cap is gone, man, that your shoelace just falls apart.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to our DNA. So we need that cap. That's called the telomere, and it burns down like a life fuse. So, like Mission Impossible, light the fuse, right? So this thing is burning down. And when it burns down, that's it. Your cell's done. So what you want to do is to slow down your cellular aging. And harsh things that you do to your body, smoking cigarettes, being a couch potato, being exposed to damaging oxidative stress, actually just being stressed out, like we are now with this friggin' pandemic. Those things all shorten our telomeres. They burn the fuse faster.
Stress.
But foods can slow it down, and some foods can reverse it and lengthen the telomere, which is really cool from an aging perspective. Right?
What are those top 3 foods that help lengthen the telomeres?
Green tea is one of them. Coffee. It's amazing. I used to live in Italy, and I just got into this habit of drinking espresso. So I got a little cup here. Amazingly, coffee actually lengthens your telomere.
Come on.
I kid you not. It's quite amazing. And leafy greens, some of the polyphenols in leafy greens can also slow down, and some of them actually look like they can lengthen the telomeres as well. So the key thing is that we are not just hapless pawns of aging. We can actually do something about it. And we can also fight against our environment because, look, the tax that we pay for being on planet Earth is we're exposed to stuff all the time. And we count on our body's health defenses to fix it. So that's a 4th defense. And our 5th defense is our immune system, which, after 2 years, over the last 2 years, we all know how important our immune system is. But what if I told you that your immune system is so powerful that when it's in its best shape, even when you're 80 years old, it is strong enough to fight cancer. In fact, it can even wipe out metastatic cancer that's spread all over your body. That's how strong your immune system is if you give it the chance. And so here's what the immune system does. It's like an army of super soldiers. So Rangers, SEALs, Marines, Special Forces, these are all parts of the immune system, all cells of the immune system. And like the Special Forces, they've got their own weapons, their own training, their own tactics, but they all work together for, the collective good. And what happens is that when you've got good, strong defenses, you can fight off invaders from the outside, bacteria and viruses, for example. But it's not just outside invaders. You got inside invaders as well. And those little microscopic cancers are inside invaders. And so our immune system patrols our body, okay? Cops on a beat. And they're looking for things that don't look right. And you see that microscopic cancer that can't grow because it doesn't have a blood vessels feeding it, angiogenesis. Basically, the immune system goes there and takes them right out. Okay. Wow. And takes a sniper shot and it's gone. And so that's why we got to protect our immune system. And there are lots of foods that can actually boost our immunity as well. What
would be those top 3 that boost the immune system?
Blueberries are a food that definitely boosts the immune system. It's in young people as well as older people. They boost the natural killer cells, which is really cool. Broccoli sprouts can boost our immune system. Now, these are the 3-day-old. These are like the 3-day-old sprouts, right?
Okay.
Okay. I mean, okay. Here's something most people don't know. The big broccoli that when we eat broccoli, we really, our moms told us to eat the treetops, right? Those they're all the same. You go to the freezer section of a grocery store and you buy some frozen broccoli, and they all look the same. They're all the same size. That's not really what broccoli looks like. If you go to the farmer's market and you see a real broccoli, is this gigantic stem with a little bit of treetop. Okay. Right. So what's in a broccoli? It's called sulforaphanes. And that's what gives broccoli that unique taste of broccoli. It's a little sulfurous. Okay. So you got to put a little olive oil, a little bit of garlic, and you can saute it up. Okay. Yeah. So the sulforaphanes, we've done research now looking at what's in the treetops. And it turns out that these sulforaphanes can starve cancer, anti-angiogenic, help your body cut off the blood supply to cancer. Broccoli treetops have it. But guess what? The stalk of the broccoli has twice as much of the good stuff than the treetops.
Eat the stalks.
Eat the stalks. So man, like if you don't want to saute the stalks, like a lot of cultures will just cut the stalks and saute them, stick it in a blender. You can make it into a smoothie or make a soup out of it, And so there's a lot of good things you can do. Put a little broccoli stem, little oregano powder, you can do light it right up, a little turmeric. It'll be really good a smoothie or a soup. However, here's the thing. So imagine this adult broccoli having these sulforaphanes. Well, it turns out that these big broccoli plants used to be sprouts. And the sprouts pretty much were sprouted from the seed with all the sulforaphanes it's ever going to have. All right. So when it gets bigger, it just gets distributed with the stalk closer to the ground, having more of it, of course. But the broccoli sprouts have 100 times more.
Wow.
Of the sulforaphanes, the good stuff, as a grown-up broccoli. So broccoli sprouts. Now, studies have been done to show that if you give people a flu shot, people in the winter should get a flu shot so you don't get the flu. All right. Just go to your drugstore to get one. Turns out that if you they did a study looking at people getting the flu shot, and they gave half the people a little shake made with broccoli sprouts, and the other group just got a placebo. And the people who got the broccoli sprout shake and the flu shot, their beneficial response of their immune system is 22 times higher.
Huh.
Like it totally rocked if they actually had a broccoli sprout shake. So that's not food versus medicine. That is food and medicine, which is really cool, right?
Interesting.
So we never want to throw out, we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We want to figure out how to make everything go work even better.
Absolutely.
I have something to say about alcohol because I get asked this all the time. Dr. Lee, red wine is good for you, right? Well, no, I just read that all wine is bad for you. And what I basically say when it comes to alcohol, because it's a triggering and somewhat controversial point. It is true that many epidemiological studies have shown that drinking a glass or two, very moderate, red wine is associated with some beneficial health outcomes, lower risk of some diseases. But I will tell you that in no study, no research is alcohol, ethanol, okay, the stuff that's underlying, your whiskey, your beer, your wine. It's the alcohol is not actually good for you. Alcohol is a toxin, actually. And so a little bit though, as you say, if you're mostly healthy and your health defenses and your metabolism is very resilient, human body's amazing. There's no such thing as a superfood. It's a super body. And even if we slug down a glass of wine or sip a glass of wine or have a drink or two, our body will bounce back. It's only, again, continuous abuse of that system that will actually break down our engine. But alcohol is something very specific. And here's how I explain it. As long as humans have been growing grain, they've been fermenting it and creating alcohol. Alcohol is part of human tradition. We celebrate main events of our life with it, births, deaths, holidays. Alcohol is part of human society. I don't think we should demonize alcohol. I think that we should just recognize it's part of the traditions of human tradition. But we should know that in no case is the ethanol actually good for you. It's just something that we do. All right. But that, and that's why we should actually think about it as a tradition rather than as a health food. Yeah. And I think that allows us to actually accommodate it in moderation in ways that are actually going to be allowable if that's your preference to celebrate, a wedding with a glass of champagne. Like, there's no shame to it. That's a human tradition. We're all human. Embrace that part of who we are. And that's, I think, the thing that I try to, that's my contribution in the health and wellness community. I try to use science, but I also try to be reasonable, and I try to recognize who we are as humans.
The nuance, right? That's where everything is heading towards. We're not all answer for everybody. We're going to sweep it under the table. Everybody's got to do the same thing. And generally speaking, if you have all these other components, whether it's alcohol or diet soda that's occasional here and there, it's not going to make a difference.
You'll bounce back,
right? You're going to bounce back. There's plenty of other crazier things that people do in life. So this goes back to the 10 principles that you talk about in the book and that you close off the book with. And I'm just going to pick a few. We're not going to run through them all. Pick up a copy of the book, link in the show notes. You can go through them. I'm going to pick a couple of these that, we can talk about here. The first one that I want to do is I want to pick something called drink the Trinity. So what is that? What does that mean? And what is the Trinity?
Well, in my book, in a part about food, I take my reader on a tour through the grocery store, including to the beverage section. And literally the way I do this is actually I invite you to jump into my shopping cart like you would have when you were a kid in your mom's shopping cart, get pushed through, and I kind of narrate all the things through it. So the beverage section of the grocery store is a pretty confusing section because it's in the middle aisles and there are endless sea of juices and sodas and bottled waters that are there. And so I try to bring a little bit of clarity to, what are the three beverages that are unquestionably healthy for you. There's no real controversy of them, all right? Because other drinks like juices and sodas, lots of controversy, lots of data. But the three things I call the holy trinity of beverages are water, okay? Water actually is critical for hydration, critical to maintain our health defenses, critical for our metabolism. You need water in the system, okay? And drinking water is something that is very natural and important to us. And when you drink cool water, you activate these temperature gauges in our stomach that are triggering our metabolism to kind of warm up the water in our stomach so we don't cool our core body temperature. So there's even metabolic benefits to drinking water. Water is also satiating. So when you actually drink water with a meal, you're naturally stretching out your stomach a little bit. And rather than actually having food in there, that water stretch actually basically slows down your appetite, slows down your hunger as well, which also helps to contribute to preventing you from overeating as well. So water is really good for you. There's no, it's a human right to drink water. We have to drink water. It's really great. Footnote to that, and this is actually something that I think really deserves careful research, more careful research is, bottled water, which is so commonly consumed, probably will have microplastics in it. Almost certainly does. And, even though the research hasn't clearly nailed what the harm of microplastics are, I would say it's probably not so good for you. We can find it like attached to a red blood cell circulating in our blood. That freaks me out, actually, to think about that. So if you can drink water, if you can drink water from a source other than bottled water, it's probably preferable.
Yeah, get a filter at home.
Get a filter at home.
There's a great quote that a friend said years ago, an acquaintance said years ago. He said, either you get a filter or you become the filter.
That's actually really true. And our kidney's going to be the filter and our bloodstream is going to become the filter. Yeah, you don't want to be
you don't want all that.
Accumulating these microplastics. But the water is really, really a good beverage. Second is tea. We talked a little bit about green tea as being beneficial to you. And tea is the second most popular beverage in the world after drinking water. So we're talking about something that a lot of people have a lot of experience with. But what I point out in my book is not just green tea. It's different kinds of green tea. Matcha tea is actually good for you. Oolong tea, which is slightly fermented green tea, also has metabolic benefits, also has polyphenols. And then for green tea, if you have matcha, which you find in a ceremonial tea, you find in a Japanese restaurant, it's bright green tea. It's kind of opaque because it's actually made with powder. And it's the entire tea leaf that's powdered. A lot of people don't realize this, but matcha is super packed with polyphenols. You know why? Matcha is grown in a very particular way. 28 days before they pick the tea leaf to make matcha, they put it under shade. They basically cover it with a canopy, and the shade is there. So the tea, in response to the tea leaf, tea plant, in response to shade, actually wants to make more polyphenols. So they make anywhere from 30 to 300 times more polyphenols under the shade. All right. And then what happens when you pick the leaf, you cut off the stem, and then they dry and powder the entire leaf. And so that's why you have so much more polyphenol.
It's like a stress response to not having enough sun.
First, it's a stress response in the plant, but then you get more, rather than having it in a tea bag or loose tea leaves, you actually powder the entire leaf. So you're getting the entire leaf, including all the polyphenols. So you drink all the polyphenols, which is why you get 30 to 300 times more than just dunking a tea bag. You also get the dietary fiber, good for your gut microbiome. So matcha tea actually is quite amazing. Actually done a study to show that matcha tea extracts can kill breast cancer stem cells.
Wow.
I'm always amazed by that because, look, as somebody who's been involved with biotech development and cancer treatment development, finding something that could kill stem cells, cancer stem cells, like breast cancer stem cells, which is what makes cancers come back, is a holy grail. We don't have a drug for it, but here, matcha tea actually been shown in the lab to actually be able to do that. To me, is actually really jaw-dropping. Then going down into even more fermented tea, because traditionally, again, this idea that in our wellness community, we wind up having all these mantras, must drink green tea and oxidized fermented tea is no good. Turns out that's not true. The science is showing that oolong tea, which is slightly fermented, also good for your metabolism. You can lose your waist, you can shrink your waist size, your waist circumference, lose body fat. And then even perhaps more surprising, if you take the extreme of fermented smoky dark teas, there's a tea that I write about called Pu'er tea. P-U-E-R-H. One of your favorites, right? Yeah. One of mine as well. This comes from a village of Pu'er that back thousands of years actually traded tea on the Silk Road. So they smoked the tea, they fermented it so it would actually survive the tea journey. And it turns out research had been done to show that Pu'er tea lights up your brown fat, burns up, triggers your excess fat burning by burning the cells, decreases your stem cells from making more fat, and fats, visceral fat as well. Quite remarkable that this fermented tea that's supposedly, fermented, can't be good, doesn't have any of the polyphenol stuff, wrong. And on top of that, they've actually discovered just a few years ago that there is this tradition, 1,000-year-old tradition of making Pu'er tea. There's even a bacteria, a probiotic that actually the bacteria is grown in the way that's fermented. In fact, they call it Pu'ercillus, like a bacillus that actually grows in Pu'er tea. So this is actually a probiotic tea, which to me is remarkable. And not only does it improve gut health, it's good for your metabolism as well. So it fires up your brown fat. So again, tea is the second part of the Holy Trinity. The third, which I always drink, and you asked me what did I want if I was coming in to do this podcast with you, and I requested a cup of coffee. Coffee has chlorogenic acid and many other polyphenols, but the chlorogenic acid not only boosts your health defenses, but it also triggers your metabolism and it stimulates your metabolism from going as well. A little bit of the caffeine, which I'm able to tolerate. Not everybody can tolerate caffeine, but I'm able to tolerate the caffeine. Caffeine also stimulates not only your your brain, but also stimulates your metabolism as well. And I'm not encouraging people to go after caffeine. I'm just saying that coffee is one of the third of the Holy Trinity: coffee, tea, and water that actually is really, really healthy.
The beautiful thing about the way you present it is like Pu'er, one of my favorite teas. I drank it so much during college.
Yeah.
Like I would drink it all the time. And then I had a little bit of a gap. And then I'm thinking recently, I'm like, you know what? It's probably been a year or two since I've had it. Like when you know the information, it's another reminder of like, oh, this thing that I used to enjoy or that I've heard of or that I heard somebody else having, like, wow, like that's exciting for me. And you include it back into your routine. And all this culminates together. And it really goes into this last principle that you talk about in the 10 principles, which is live to eat, right? The joy of searching out, being a food hunter, forager in our modern world, and really leaning into the idea of not being fear-based around food, but actually, I'll let you set it up. Sometimes we hear this phrase, like people say, oh, do you eat to live or do you live to eat? And almost like live to eat has a demeaning tone that people give it in that capacity. Talk about how you're representing it to the audience.
Yeah, well, in my book, one of the things that I really try to, and I hope the readers get this, convey is that we don't need to fear our food. The very foods that taste great can be actually good for us if we're mindful about how we eat it and when we eat it and all that kind of other stuff, and to find good combinations of it, and that these are connected to our old traditions. And that's really how I really became very mindful of this whole idea of living to eat. So I did a gap year before I went to medical school to become a doctor. I was a biochemist in college, and I was very enamored by history, and I was always interested in the Mediterranean because when I studied, I took a very influential course called the Renaissance History of Man. And that course fascinated me because it was really talking about that inflection point between the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, and the Renaissance, sort of the Enlightenment, and all the incredible arts and sciences and literature explosion of culture that occurred during the Renaissance, right? And I realized something that was really amazing, which is that at any point, like it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like, one day was in a dark room, it's called the Middle Ages, and then one day somebody clicked on a light switch and, oh, it's a Renaissance. No, this actually took place over hundreds of years that this evolution actually occurred. And I realized that there was something really valuable about this idea of growing to higher light, a stage of enlightenment that occurs over time. I really wanted to see where this occurred, which happened to be in the Mediterranean that we were studying in Italy and Greece. So I really wanted to get over there to study it. And then I also realized that the food traditions also, as part of my study, changed dramatically between the Middle Ages, where people were just like, cooking, those gigantic, Bronto burgers over a fire, to really beginning to understand how ingredients melded together. The simmering and the cooking and the stewing. Like these were not medieval age. You did have cavemen were doing that, but really sort of during the Middle Age, that's when the modern Asian and Mediterranean actually cooking techniques came into being. So I wanted to see this. So before I went to medical school, I did a gap year. And I went to Italy. I kind of embedded myself, so to speak. And I lived with a family, and I was there explicitly to study the link between food and culture and health. I wanted to see what it was like over there in Italy and Greece. I traveled all around Italy, and I actually also did some cooking for the families I was living with. In Greece, I went to a monastery. I literally volunteered to be a cook in the monastery one day because the abbot announced that the chef monk was sick, had the flu, and they needed volunteers, and who knew how to cook. And so I raised my hand, and off I went. In there, we were stirring a ginormous pot of beans with a canoe paddle, literally, and cooking for the entire monastery. This was like cooking Easter feast. And, and to me, that experience burned into my brain while I was living there, that people really enjoyed their food. They knew about their food. They talked about their food. They looked forward to their food. So, if you go to Mediterranean, anyone, if you have a friend in Italy or in Greece and they took you out to a meal or cooked a meal for you, while you sat down with your meal, they would be talking about their food. Italians talk about what they're eating as they're eating it, and they talk about the season it is and how to prepare it and different nuances about it. People are passionate about their food. Same thing in Asia, I would imagine the same thing as in India. People take the time to prepare their food, and when they serve it, that's what people talk about. They talk about their food, and they really, really relish it and enjoy it. And they look forward to their next meal. I think, to me, I learned that was the antithesis of what I came back to when I went to medical school, where we were so rushed, we were so busy, we didn't have time to eat. And so when you sat down, it was really just to pile in some sustenance and to get to the next thing. And that, to me, was, I really wanted to live to eat as opposed to just eat to live, to pile in some calories so I can keep going. I think I've really lived my life that way, and what I hope for people who read my book is that they'll really see from the way that I write about food that it's something that I enjoy, it's passionate, and that it's something that you can really look forward to. Like when I was writing some of the things that I wrote, I wrote part of this book, by the way, in the Mediterranean. I went back, I was doing some research in places, and I finished my book actually in Greece. I was on a Greek island, and I went to a little writing cave, and the food that I would eat, like I would write about afterwards, and it would make my mouth water to write about the food I just ate all over again. So, I hope readers really get this idea. Like, please don't fear your food. Love your food. And it's just so amazing that we're so fortunate, actually, to be able to, benefit from societies and histories and cultures that have actually figured out a lot of stuff for us. And now what's cool is that science is bringing us really to the cutting edge, that forefront, where we begin to understand why the things that taste so great are actually so great. This is a really provocative study of kiwi fruit. 2 kiwi fruits a day times 4 days, and you measure the stool in healthy subjects from every single day, and you can see that just having 2 kiwi fruits in the first 24 hours changes the bacteria that you can measure in the stool by improving the good bacteria as quickly as the first day. And over 4 days, you can increase another good bacteria as well. So these changes can be really quick. And harmful foods can actually similarly change the makeup very quickly. We don't measure this routinely in the clinic, but in the future we will. There are other foods that actually contain bacteria. Yogurt is the best example of this, but there are other fermented foods, whether it's poutsai, kimchi, or a sauerkraut. And these all actually are exposed to the air, healthy bacteria grow in them, we eat them, and over the course of hundreds of years, cultures have realized that this is actually something that can be beneficial to us, and now we're beginning to dive down deeply and understand why. Here are some foods that are beneficial to the microbiome. Finally, I want to just close by saying the microbiome is connected to the immune system, which we know is important because we now realize that about 70% of our immune systems actually wrap like a jelly roll inside our intestines, and the bacteria talks to our immune system. Former US President Jimmy Carter had melanoma that spread to his liver and his brain, and he retired from public life thinking that he was not going to survive. He received one of the biggest breakthroughs in medicine today, which is an immunotherapy that doesn't kill the cancer directly, but uncloaks the cancer that's been hiding from the immune system to allow a 90-year-old person's immune system to find the tumor as a health defense and to wipe it out. Now, this is the type of response that he got before treatment and after treatment. This is a CT scan of the brain. You can see tumor versus no tumor. And we do see this in melanoma, for example, but less than 20% of the people actually respond. So this is very frustrating, the difference between life and death, response and no response. It's one of the big mysteries today. And one of the things that's really remarkable is we're beginning to understand that the foods we eat may impact our immune system through the microbiome. And this is actually a colleague of mine, Laurence Zivogel in Paris at the Institut Gustave Roussy, found that in 200 consecutive patients treated with immunotherapy, those patients who responded had one bacteria that the ones who didn't respond did not have in their stool. And that's a bacteria called Akkermansia muciniphila, and you can't eat that as a probiotic. You can only eat foods that cause your gut to secrete the mucus that it likes to grow in. And this is now changing the way that we think about how cancer patients are fed, because how many cancer patients that you know might be getting an antibiotic unknowingly and wiping out this bacteria that could make the difference between whether they respond or don't respond. This is also beginning to change this. And this is how it works. Pomegranate, it's got a lagitannin, it's bioactive. It causes the gut to secrete the mucus. The bacteria Akkermansia grows. It lights up the immune system. So now you have a more fortified, more active immune system. Now you hang a bag of immunotherapy, and then cancer immunotherapy will then work on and allow the activated immune cells to go find that cancer. This is oversimplified, but this is what we believe works. And it's very personal to me as I figured this out, because my mother, who was in her 80s, was diagnosed with endometrial cancer, cancer of the lining of the uterus that spread. And she was told by her doctors there was no chance to survive, and at her age, chemotherapy might be worse than the disease itself, and that she should actually just go undergo palliative care. So we actually took the tumor, did the deep dive, found the smoking guns for immune therapy. We then altered her diet, made sure she had the echinacea, and after 3 treatments, 9 weeks, we had a complete response, never had chemotherapy. She was actually able to be completely saved, and this is her today, completely well with no sign of cancer. So again, this is not a simple case, but a complicated way that we're beginning to think things. And then finally, let me just tell you, broccoli sprouts also boost the immune system. And this is a study of 29 volunteers who were getting the flu vaccine through a nasal spray. And it found that if they gave them 2 cups of broccoli sprout shake as a smoothie a day, combined with the nose spray, they had a 22 times increase in their immune response to the flu vaccine compared to people who didn't have it. So what I've actually showed you is not just food as medicine, but foods and medicine, where what's happening is that the technology that nature laced into food is meeting the technology that we have within our body. Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out.